All right, hello everybody. My name is Ian. I'm from the Georgia Institute of Technology, and I'm here to talk to you about pickles, protests, and peculiar semantics. And we'll see why those are all related. If you get sick of dill puns by the end, I'm sorry, not sorry. You'll see why. So it's a well-known fact that people online argue a lot, and these arguments can get pretty heated, and often it feels like you're just shouting into loudspeakers at each other. And so I was thinking about this. I was actually curious. I want to have a quick poll of just get the creative stuff flowing of insults that are not swear words. So if you want to shout some out. Dill. Yeah.
You're such a Trump supporter.
Good one. Yeah. That's something like wiener. I don't know. Moron. Yeah.
Noob.
So as a result of arguments, people adopt language to their needs and come up with things like snowflake, which in the US is used to, I guess, mean someone who's especially sensitive, and it's a favorite insult of Tommy Loren. And so this is actually interesting from a linguistic perspective because this is one of many different kinds of semantic change that can happen. In this case, we call it pejoration because the meaning of the word gets more negative. So where like snowflake was originally neutral, and then over a short period of time, it got this very negative connotation. One instance where this happens a lot is actually during political crises. And the one that I want to talk about today is this conflict that's been going on between Russia and Ukraine that's resulted in a lot of actually military action as a result of this contested territory. But of interest to this talk is the way that the language has changed. So in particular, there's this one word, dill, ukrop, that became polarized as a result of this conflict. It's because it sounds like the word Ukrainian, and so people sort of adopted it as this insult. And so just to really spell this out, it started out as the word dill, and then over like a course of a year, it actually got picked up as an insult. So that means that, if you think about semantics in terms of like words that relate to one another, the word ukrop was originally related to like food words like jar, pickle, and plant, and then over the course of a year, it became related to like Ukrainian, stubborn, idiot, and some other strong words that I will not show. This is not an isolated problem. People actually noticed that Ukrainians and Russians on social media were picking up words pretty quickly and like changing their meaning pretty dramatically. So you have words like cotton, beetle, mercenaries. Gatorop was a pretty clever portmanteau. There are a lot of those. The setting for this is there's this one Russian social network called VKontakte where there's a lot of political debate and especially memes. This is actually, it's hard to tell, but it's this like gray, gross-looking cotton jacket that's meant to like make fun of Russian people. I don't actually speak Russian, but I picked up a few words for this, but yeah. So one thing you might be wondering is like, okay, semantics are cool, but how do we actually capture them? In NLP, we have like these sort of fixed resources like WordNet, where you look up a word like dog and see that it's related to cat through some semantic relationship. But this isn't scalable to new words like ukrop that kind of come and go in a short period of time. And this is where distributed word representations or like word embeddings can help us out. So if you have like two different corpora, so like in 2014 and 2015, you can feed it into some model like word2vec, and you end up with these two different vectors of the same words like ukrop. And you can measure how much they changed over time. And so that's what was interesting to us, was, what are these words that change dramatically over time, and, what are some properties of them? You might be wondering, like, okay, are we just going to be reading words all the time, or can we actually visualize this in some cool way? It's not perfect, but we can do it enough to get the gist. So you have this squiggly line where this is tracing the embedding of the word ukrop projected in 2 dimensions. In the bottom left corner, I guess it's a little hard to see. But the word ukrop was originally associated, like I said, with like more food words, so like pickle, jar, and milk. And then if you follow the squiggly line over time, it becomes associated with more charged words, so like Russian, stubborn, more insults. So this was, again, an example of an old word that sort of became charged. Another word is the word vata. So that refers to this cotton jacket that were popular among Russians during a certain period of time. And as a result of that connection, it sort of gained this new meaning rather than just cotton. It jumped to meaning this pro-Russian insult. So sort of like with dill, it started off being associated with more literal words, so like surgery. I don't know why dwarf was there, but like bow. And that over the course of time, actually pretty quickly, it got picked up into like moron, zombie, brainless, annoy, some more negative stuff. So the old word question is interesting because it's like, okay, how do people take words like snowflake and sort of make them more politically charged? But we saw this happening also with new words. So this word titushki actually refers to this one sort of like mobster named Titushko who was paid to beat up some member of the media. And it sort of started off with this, again, more neutral meanings, like, just any sort of mercenary. But that, again, rather quickly, it sort of became associated with more thugs. So again, even with new words like titushki, they could just coin them and they become very rapidly negatively charged. So that's the visualization part of this, is like, yeah, we can visualize word semantics, which is pretty cool. The more interesting question I thought was whether we can predict how much a word is going to change in terms of its semantics. And the answer is usually we can do a pretty good job of predicting how much semantics are going to change. This is a little bit boring, but the general idea is you just like, look at how much a word like ukrop is changing and sort of take those the distances between the vectors, at different time steps, and you're trying to predict how much the shift is going to be at the final time step. So that's like our task. The most interesting part of this was that it's actually easier to predict semantic change without considering frequency data. So even if you have no idea how often ukrop is being used, if you just know the semantics of it, you can do a pretty good job of predicting, that it's going to become more negative or more charged over time. We also found that if you break it up by sort of like how the words are used, you can find that proper nouns, so stuff like different regions of Russia, so like LNR was a region of Ukraine. Those tend to be harder to predict than for more common nouns like ukrop and junta, just like a sort of form of government. So those are the main findings. So what is a big deal? Why are we talking about semantics? I know, right? One application for this is to track examples of polarizing language. So for instance, you might not see like little swear words thrown around all the time, but in the case of this article, they found that certain trolls were using certain coded language to, insult certain racial groups. I didn't know about the Skittles thing, but that was interesting. So that's one instance of how semantics are important. You can think about maybe extending this to sort of like auto-ban situations, where like if someone uses the word Skittles like in a certain context, that you ban them. But it's kind of a problem because you can't assume that word semantics are going to be the same all the time. You have to be a little more careful. What I think is maybe the most interesting is that you can use sort of semantic change to track how inside jokes and slang can evolve over time. So we see words like woke, lit, and extra, where they do have very literal meanings, but that certain populations can adopt them and morph the meanings to something else. So that way, if people can track semantic change better, you might avoid situations like this, where you're asking what lit means. So yeah, I hope if nothing else, you take away the idea that language change is a big deal, just like this pickle. Yeah.